Hi, do you like ban lists? I like ban lists. I think they're great. They help rein in the game a bit when things start to go a little too crazy. Perhaps a card was released that was a little too strong for its time, or maybe it's part of some degenerate combo. Either way, a good ban list can help to wash away all of the frustration and negativity that comes with a bad meta. But what happens when the ban list goes wrong? Bushiroad hits the wrong card and upsets the community. Maybe you'll complain about it on Twitter, or perhaps you'll make a video about it. You might even take a break from the game for a little while just to step away from it all. But what if Bushiroad makes a list that is so bad that shopkeepers threaten to stop selling the game over it? This is the time that Luard almost killed Cardfight Vanguard. Our story begins in 2016 with G Trial Deck 10 Ritual of Dragon Sorcery. This product introduced to us Dragheart Luard as the new face of G-era Shadow Paladin. To say that the deck was stacked in his favor is a bit of an understatement. For one, Shadow Paladin has always been an extremely popular clan. Ren, the character most associated with the clan, has always been a fan favorite. And Shadows had always seen its fair share of meta relevance with things like Raging Form or Phantom Blaster Abyss. In addition, the previous G-era boss, Claret Sword Dragon, just kind of disappeared. And while we did get the Ren Legend deck and the Diablo archetype, Bushiroad never really fleshed that concept out beyond the first wave, so Shadow players were kinda starved for some sort of G-era representation. And finally, look at him. He's a sexy dragon wizard. There is a 100% chance that you're playing him for aesthetics. In fact, some of you are on TCG Player looking at prices right now. All of this is to say that Luard was extremely popular. And while Luard was rather weak on his initial release, a steady stream of solid support eventually pushed the deck into meta relevance, and Luard cemented his place as one of the all-time greats. Fast forward to 2020, we're a good 2 years into the V reboot, and V Booster Set 10, Phantom Dragon Aeon, has just been announced, featuring the return of Luard. Naturally, hype was high for this fan-favorite card returning to V-era, and as the new support was revealed, it became clear that Luard was set to be a top-tier strategy once again. Dragheart Luard could trade 2 of your grade 1s to retire one of your opponent's rear guards and draw a card, as well as the ability to transform into his more powerful Drag Driver form. Drag Driver Luard could then call a number of grade 1s equal to the Luards in your soul +1 when he was placed. He could also increase his own power based on the number of grade 1 rearguards you control, and give all grade 1s an extra critical if you have 2 or more grade 3s in your soul. Other support included Morfessa, who could act as a grade 1 in the deck or on the field, and gave you an all-important extra attack. Leafall, who could grab a grade 1 from deck for further card advantage, and Abyss Owl, who could also draw you cards. Combine this with older cards such as Skullwitch Nemain, who could call anything with 5,000 power for free, and Danger Lunge Dragon, who is an alternate finisher option, and you've got a pretty solid deck on your hands. But the question remains, what exactly took this deck over the top? What makes this deck so powerful and problematic that Bushiroad just had to hit it on the ban list? Why is this video called The Time Luard Almost Killed Vanguard? To answer these questions, we must first look at the other Shadow Paladin support released in this set. Phantom Blaster Dragon is the OG, debuting all the way back in original BT04. PBD was the first boss monster for Shadow Paladin, and in ye olden days of Boomer Vanguard, PBD had an evolution in the form of Phantom Blaster Overlord. This form had yet to make its debut in V-Era, despite the fact that PBD had been released all the way back in VBT2. With the release of VBT10, however, Phantom Blaster Overlord would finally get to make its grand debut in V. V Overlord pays homage to its original form by having a cross-ride ability. It could gain 10,000 power and set its original criticals to 2 when you had Phantom Blaster Dragon in your soul. While this is a powerful ability, there was a slight challenge in getting it online. You see, Phantom Blaster Dragon isn't exactly the best card in the world. The card had always been medium at best, and with how powerful the modern metagame had become, you really didn't want to be sitting on this guy for a whole turn. And so, to try and solve this issue, Bushiroad released a support card called Freezing Witch Bendy. Bendy's ability reads, if your Vanguard is Blaster Dark, Soul Blast 1 and retire this unit. Search your deck for one Phantom Blaster Dragon, ride it as stand, shuffle your deck, and that placed unit cannot use its act abilities until end of turn. With this ability, you can ride up to PBD early and get the ball rolling on your cross ride. Except, there's nothing saying that you have to play this with Overlord. And hey look, Drag Driver's crit ability works with any grade 3s. Okay, so this has the potential to be a really powerful combo, but like, Bendy doesn't really do anything else aside from the ride ability, and you've gotta open her consistently to be able to pull it off, and wait, how much power does this thing have again? Okay, so you can search for Bendy with Nemain, but you also need Blaster Dark. It's not like Bushiroad would just make another 5,000 power unit that can search him, oh god damn it. So yeah, Nemain is just full combo. At the cost of playing a few bricks in your deck, you now have a superior ride engine that allows you to stack a bunch of force markers and unlock Drag Driver's 2 crit ability way sooner than intended. This was just a little bit strong. Turns out a deck that can make 4 attacks that are all really big with 2 criticals while your opponent is still at grade 2 was really hard to deal with. Who would have guessed? And even if it didn't immediately win, the deck still gained a lot of card advantage, so you could survive whatever comeback your opponent was attempting. Upon seeing Luard absolutely demolish the metagame on release, Bushiroad naturally freaked the hell out. About a week or so after VBT10 released, Bushiroad put out a new ban list that, among other things, put a restriction onto Luard. Now, given what I've told you so far about what it is that pushed Luard over the top, what do you think Bushiroad did to weaken the deck? Given that the crux of the issue is having 2 grade 3s earlier than intended, you would think that the solution would be to hit the engine, choice restrict either Bendy or Phantom Blaster if they don't want to directly hit a new card. Instead, Bushiroad decided to choice restrict Nemain and Luard. You see, people weren't playing any of the engine cards at high copies. The cards needed for it to work are mostly bad and don't really do anything for the deck outside of the superior ride. So instead of jamming your deck full of bricks, you just play a couple copies and lean on Nemain for consistency. So, given that Nemain could search out this engine, and was still very powerful even without it, Bushiroad decided that, actually this is the problem, and acted accordingly. In fairness to Bushiroad, this did work. After the ban list took effect, people dropped the engine because it wasn't consistent anymore. And while Luard did remain a top tier strategy, it wasn't nearly as oppressive as it was with the ride engine. In terms of pure gameplay, restricting Nemain wasn't horrible. However, there's another audience that's watching these changes aside from the players, and that's shop owners. They are the ones buying and selling the products after all. It's in their best interest to see what's going to be hyped up and profitable. So, when Luard was announced, many shopkeepers decided, alright, it's time to start stocking up on Nemains because she was clearly the best buyout target. She was already a staple in many Shadows decks due to her insane utility, and she only ever had one printing in VBT02. And although it was being reprinted in VBT10, it was as an SP, so the price wouldn't really shift all that much. And so the market did its thing, and price speculators bought out the main in anticipation of the next big release. And then Bushiroad restricted her a week later. Sure, players had until the end of September to get use out of it, but no one's gonna pay big bucks for a card that's going to be illegal a couple weeks later. And so, all the money spent stocking up on the main went down the toilet just like that. Shop owners were not super happy about this. Confidence in the product plummeted, and many shops threatened to drop the game altogether. You might be thinking that this is a bit of an extreme reaction for a bad ban list, but it's important to keep in mind that the game was not in the best state at this time. Around VBT06, the game kinda started going into a bit of a downward spiral. This set introduced Mordred, Hyuga, and Silverthorn, 3 decks that I think shaped the way V would ultimately turn out. Mordred was the first prominent deck to really emphasize gaining additional gift markers. Hyuga and Silverthorns were both powerful Excel decks that could also gain solid card advantage, which really went over the top when Bushiroad introduced Gift 2. This marked a period of rapid power creep where everything started to become a crazy combo deck. And going beyond just a bad meta, there was also all of the outright mistakes Bushiroad released over the years. Premium Collection 2019 has the dubious honor of introducing the first card ever to be completely banned, Esteemed Deity of Abundant Waters Ichikishima. The end of 2019 saw the introduction of Riviere, a fair and balanced card that definitely wasn't missing a line of text. Riviere was so powerful that Bushiroad had to errata the card just to stop this fish. And then of course, there is this. This wonderful little card was so broken it sparked mass outrage in the community, and all of the backlash forced Bushiroad to limit it to 1 pre-release, otherwise it would have completely broken Premium. And even after averting that particular crisis, Premium Collection 2020 still broke the game because of Nue Dio. So, with the metagame being generally bad and Bushiroad making a bunch of mistakes over the course of V, this Luard situation really felt like the straw that broke the camel's back. Bushiroad did not have a handle on their game, and shopkeepers had had enough. Of course, the fact that we're here now, discussing this on a Vanguard channel, means the game obviously hasn't died. Once Bushiroad saw that shopkeepers were rebelling against them, they immediately began to beg and plead and promise they would do better. And well, the game is still around. Of course, just because the game survived doesn't mean this moment didn't have a huge impact on the game, for better or worse. For the bad, the situation directly led to the implementation of the VR protection policy. In an effort to appease shop owners, Bushiroad declared they would no longer be reprinting any VRs until the end of 2022 in order to protect investments into older products. This has led to a very ridiculous situation where Bushiroad is actively printing support for these years-old cards that were limited in supply to begin with, and just not reprinting them. Meanwhile, cards that came out within the last year or so are being reprinted like nothing, even though they're still relatively available. It sucks, and it feels like Luard is still being held over our heads, even though we're a couple years removed from the situation now. Bushiroad in general has been kind of a mixed bag in regards to reprints. They certainly do get things right. Recently, they reprinted the D Perfect Guards and Overtriggers, which seems to have improved availability and pricing on those cards. On the other hand, people have opened cases of DBT7 in Japan and found that D triggers were being reprinted at a rate of 1 per box. Not 1 per nation, not 1 per trigger type, 1. And things like that suck. I don't want to go too deep into it here, but generally speaking, I would prefer it if things stayed within the $10 to $20 range, and I think certain fundamental cards like effect triggers and perfect guards should be as cheap and accessible as possible. And aside from reprints, I feel like recently quality control has been kind of lacking. The foiling seems to have gotten worse. I feel like cards that I've bought within the last couple of years have curled a lot more than stuff I bought in G. And V Collection 5 and 6 was an absolute disaster in terms of misprints. But for all of the problems that the game has had, I think there's also been a lot of good that has come in the last 2 years since Luard. For one, the game rebooted a second time. While I don't think this particular incident motivated the change, this happened in September of 2020, the reboot was announced January 2021, you don't just reboot your entire game and staff in just 4 months. I do think it solidified their decision to go through with it. While the deboot has had its ups and downs, ban overtriggers, I do think overall it's been pretty successful. Personally, I'm a lot more excited for the game now than I was back during V. We also have more consistent ban lists nowadays, starting from the deboot. They're now being packaged alongside Bushiroad's product streams instead of just coming out whenever. So we have a more predictable pace of 1 per quarter. They've also separated the ban list between JP and EN, so things that the EN player base feels very strongly about can be addressed without affecting the JP player base. And overall, Bushiroad seems to be trying to push Vanguard to a wider audience. They have sponsored VTubers to promote their products. There was an IGN article written about the game, and we're getting the newest Vanguard game released in English and released on Steam too. But I digress. So, that was the time Luard almost killed the game. A combination of mounting design flaws and general poor decision making very nearly led to this game's demise. And while the game definitely still has problems, I think it has rebounded for the most part. Hopefully, as time moves on and the VR policy ends, we will be able to move past this particular moment in Vanguard's history. But for now, that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you to our $10 patrons, Darren, Cole, Josh, Jeremy, and GR. If you would like to support the show, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/nexusatnight. $5 gets you a whole-ass bonus show, and $10 gets you 1-day early access to videos. You can also use the promo code ATNIGHT at 50cards.shop for 5% off your order. We also have merch, link will be in the description. You can follow us on Twitter or Instagram at NexusAtNight. And you can follow Atlas at AtlasNovac, Matt at Wiggums, 2Gs, 2Zs, or me at Plasma Eclipse. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.